Hi guys, if Boris Johnson thought he was going to BS his way through an interview with Sky News' Wilfred Frost, he was deeply mistaken. Now the chat was a complete car crash, as the former Prime Minister lied and was called out on those lies. He tried to defend Brexit and failed. He tried to take credit for the Rwanda scheme and was exposed. However, this clip you're about to see is probably one of the better examples of Boris Johnson trying to fib but failing terribly. Have a listen to this.
On immigration and to get free, to separate from freedom of movement. Do you think they expected to see immigration go down, not up?
Well, it did go down massively during the pandemic.
Well, that's for different reasons.
And what happened was that we then had if you remember, we then had a massive labour shortage. We couldn't get anybody to stack the shelves. We couldn't get anybody to drive the fuel trucks. And so the Migration Advisory Committee decided that it'd be a good idea hang on, let me finish, because this is why immigration went up.
But forgive me, Mr. Johnson, interrupting, because the 3-year average before Brexit was 279,000 per year. The 3-year average since Brexit, since your point system was introduced, which is what the agency uses as its guide, 632,000. You can point to 1 year there where inflation had an effect in the middle, but not the overall averages. So again, I just step back and say, broadly speaking, immigration has gone up a lot since Brexit, when people expected it to come down.
But we have it, the point is that we now, it went up because we were desperately short of labour. And I think in retrospect, it went up far too much, and that was a decision taken by the Migration Advisory Committee on the basis of all the advice they were getting.
Because, see, the problem here is that the freedom of movement ended at around the same time as the pandemic. And what Boris Johnson is trying to do here is saying, well, it was the problem was the pandemic. We had less people coming in during the pandemic. Yes, of course, because there was a pandemic and the borders were pretty much closed. People were not returning to Britain. People had left. They were not coming back, especially during the pandemic. There was very little freedom of movement during the pandemic, all over Europe, not just in Britain. So you can't point to that, as he was trying to do. But he's trying to suggest that, well, there was a shortage of workers because of the pandemic, and that's why we saw a massive increase in immigration. No, because you ended freedom of movement for Europeans. Because if that was the case, then you would have seen a lot of Europeans coming in. But you didn't see that. You saw a lot of people from non-EU countries coming in. They were coming to fill jobs that had been vacated by Europeans. Boris Johnson can't get away from that. He can try and spin it whatever way he wants, but that's the reality. I don't understand what's the point in interviewing Boris Johnson, because he can't tell the truth. You know, if you were to ask him his name, he'd probably lie. What is the point in engaging in these charades? It's good to see him grilled. It's good to see him called out, but it's not going to make a difference to him, and it's not going to make any difference to the people who still support him. There are still people who think that Boris Johnson will be a good Prime Minister once again. There are people in the Conservative Party who would like to see him back because they think he would help them win a general election. And sadly, they may be right. The public have been lied to, they've been conned, but their memory is extremely short. And I'm laying the cards on the table here. There's a possibility, a remote possibility, but there's a possibility that Boris Johnson could come back, could win a seat as an MP, lying through his teeth, and could lead the Conservative Party in the future. It's a remote possibility, but it's not completely impossible. Because he knows that there's a certain number of people in the Conservative Party who would love to have him back, and he knows that there's a significant number of people in Britain who will forget his lies, will forget his shenanigans, will forget his corruption, and will welcome him back with open arms. It's the sad reality of politics. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.